Today's episode sponsored by Chinese Pepsi. Konnichiwa. Spider-Man 2. Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Not that Spider-Man 2 or the other Spider-Man 2. Nope, not Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro or even Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro. This Spider-Man 2, the video game. This came out a couple years ago, but I just recently got a PS5, so I just played it now and I want to talk about it. I avoided seeing any reviews for this game when it first came out because I wanted to avoid spoilers. So I have no idea if any of my hot takes are just reiterating stuff that people said 2 years ago. Am I adding anything new to the conversation? I don't know, but I got spiders on the brain and I want to talk about it. Let's get into it.
And I will crush that Spider-Man, and then that other Spider-Man, and all the Spider-Man, till I'm the Spider-Man!
Spider-Man 2 is about balance. I know because they told me in this cutscene. Which is maybe ironic because I think balancing all the many ideas of this game is where it struggles. There is a lot going on here and so many characters. We got the classic Danny Phantom trio of Pete, MJ, Miles. Then we got Harry, Norman, Dr. Connors, Kraven, Venom, Sandman, Mysterio, returning characters like Martin Lee, Black Cat, Tombstone, Yuri, who's a ninja now, all of Miles' supporting characters, Rio, Uncle Aaron, Ganke, Haley. What, you don't remember Haley? The deaf graffiti artist from that one skippable side quest in Miles Morales? Well, she's a main character now, and Miles' main love interest. Why don't you remember Haley? They established that Miles is friends and has a crush on her in the skippable last time on cutscene that is in the menu, but you can totally skip it. How do you not remember famous Spider-Man character Haley? There's a whole side quest where you play as her and you get to do goofy motion control graffiti art. The ultimate Spider-Man experience. I'm teasing here because I actually don't really mind Haley that much. Miles is a character that has not been around that long in the comics compared to Peter. So while Peter has like decades of supporting characters to pull from, Miles doesn't have that many. And the first few story arcs of his comic are kind of like based on reacting to the legacy of the death of Peter. And so he's like interacting with like Nick Fury and a lot of Peter's old villains and stuff. And he really doesn't have that many popular like love interest characters either, aside from maybe Gwen, who works much better in the movies than in the comics. So I'm actually fine with them creating some new supporting characters for Miles and even ones that are love interests. But I do think it is kind of strange that like this one side character that plays a very minor role in the Miles Morales game suddenly gets promoted to main character status and love interest, and it's like, who is she again? What was I talking about again? Oh yeah, balance. And see, that's where the main problem with this game comes. It's trying to be so many different things for so many different people that I think the core things that actually work about this game kind of get lost in the spider sauce. The main thing this game excels at is the gameplay. It is just so much fucking fun to swing around as Spider-Man. There's great new additions like the web line, which felt like it should have always been there, and it retroactively feels weird that it wasn't. You can like slingshot yourself across the whole map, and it's super fun and cool. There's also the web wings. I don't like the web wings. I think they were mostly included here to make traversal easier, which does make sense because the map is fucking huge. It's significantly bigger than the map of the first game with the inclusion of some of the boroughs. So you spend a lot of time in the main like story quests swinging back and forth across the East River, which is kind of boring if you're just swinging regularly. So introduce the web wings and you can just fly right across. The concept of the web wings goes all the way back to like the early Steve Ditko designs. And I've always kind of been curious to see like what it would be like if Spider-Man used those web wings, armpit web things to like glide across from building to building until I got it. And then I realized I don't like it. They used these a bunch in the MCU Spider-Man movies and I don't like it. I don't like that he can just fly, and I don't like it here in the games. He flies now. They fly now. They fly now again. I don't need Spider-Man to fly. He could swing around. That's what's cool about Spider-Man. He's got a very cool and unique traversal system. You made it very fun in the games. I say don't mess with that. Luckily, the web wings are mostly optional in this game. apart from like a couple side quests. You can even swing across the East River really slowly if you want every time. And I did. And I had fun. The combat is also a blast. The Miles game, you had all these like fun electricity attacks, plus he can turn invisible. He gets like all these extra powers that Peter doesn't have. Miles is so much fun to play as in that game. Why would I ever want to return to playing as Peter? Easy. Symbiote. Peter gets all these really fun Venom symbiote powers. You could pick up like 5 guys at once and smash them down. You could throw a ball of goo at them. It's great. And even with all these like extra abilities that the game gives to both Miles and Peter, the combat still feels focused and even streamlined. They made the spider gadgets work in this game. They're actually usable, so you end up using them a bunch more. The combat just feels nice and it's fun. This is one of those aspects of the game that does feel perfectly balanced, as all things should be. Both Miles and Peter are a joy to play as, and I never felt like something was being taken away from me when it like prompted me to switch between one or the other. The trouble with balancing these two main characters comes more in the story. Miles gets sidelined for like a good chunk of this game. They definitely had like this idea to have the story revolve around Harry and Venom. Like they set that up all the way back in the first game, so that was kind of locked in. And in the comics, those storylines with Harry and Venom and Green Goblin and all those stories that they're pulling from don't include Miles in the original comics. So there's not really an obvious place for him here. I actually do really like a lot of the stuff they do with him in this game. There's a whole bunch of stuff with Martin Lee, which I think is really interesting. Miles gets a boss fight against gooed up Peter, which I think is really fun and cool. But because more often than not, the main story is focused on Peter, MJ, and Harry, Miles is just like not involved. Miles really gets the shaft with like a lot of the more boring side quests in this game.
Here, your frying pan.
Miles, come quick! Kraven is hunting down villains across the city, and he just blew up my science factory. Oh, sorry, Pete. I gotta get this guy who I went to school with a date to the prom. Miles, come quick! Venom's turned the city into goo! He's making people into symbiotes just like Web of Shadows. Bionicle Web of Shadows?
Throw yourselves off the edge.
No, the video game Spider-Man Web of Shadows.
They're not normal! They might...
Oh, that one. Well, sorry, Pete. I gotta find Charles Barkley's stolen trombone. Wow, look like they got everything here. Look, is that Miles Teller's drum kit? Look at Miles dancing like the whitest guy ever.
Full of the exaggerated swagger of a black teen.
Spider-Man, we're at it again. This time with 50% more Spider-Man.
You sure you my nephew, man?
I don't even hate this mission. Again, it's an optional side quest, and I don't think it's even a bad idea to try to educate some of us dumb and uncultured whites. But the contrast between like how crazy the stakes get with like Venom taking over the city, and then just like, oh no, I gotta find a stolen drum kit is like, what? But don't worry, because if you thought Miles was the only one with boring side quests, you're in luck, because Peter does also have that.
Let's go get on my bike.
Okay.
There's like this bike mission early on with Harry, which is really more of a playable cutscene to like introduce Harry as a character. But it turns out that it's also setting up a couple different side quests where you drive a experimental bike at a middling pace by pressing R2. Innovation. I don't even hate these either because they're so dumb that I think they're really funny. Like, why were they so proud of this biking mission that they make you do it more than once? It's so dumb. No one's forcing you to do that. You can make a side quest whatever you want. Why would you make it boring? Like, you can make it a fun, over-the-top like side mission, like in the Yakuza games. You could do like a fun skateboarding Tony Hawk mini game. These EMF side missions are so dumb.
At this rate, the battery will overheat and explode.
My bike's gonna explode? What? You know what a normal bike never does? Explode. And also I can go up a ramp kinda fast. What is the purpose of this experimental bike that might explode from riding it? What the fuck?
Oh no.
Oh no, I'm legit stuck. I guess everyone's gonna fucking die.
There's this one EMF mission where there's like these plants that are dying, so Peter's like, I know, I'll splice the plant's DNA with fish DNA. And I'm like, what? Don't do that. Peter, that's how most of your villains get created. Why are you so casual about making a plant-fish hybrid? This should not be your first thought. Again, this is like a weird criticism because it doesn't really affect the overall quality of the game. But like, what the fuck does EMF do? I feel like all of their science completely lacks like basic understanding of ecology and has zero practical applications.
And the climate changing unpredictably, we need to adapt more quickly than nature normally would.
What do you mean the climate's changing unpredictably? It's entirely predictable. We know exactly what the cause and effects of climate change are. There's like these little bee drones that you fly around that are supposed to like shoot lasers at bees' predators to prevent them from getting eaten. And it's like, that's not why bees are dying, man. It's human interference, it's global warming, pesticides, deforestation, all of those kind of things. It's not that the bees are getting eaten by rats. Like, what? It has nothing to do with the natural ecosystem. And if it did, why would a bunch of, like, robot laser drones solve that? I'm glad this place blew up, man. It was a lawsuit waiting to happen. All right, let's talk about Mary Jane.
It's all about a girl. Mary Jane Watson.
MJ? Mary Jane.
Mary Jane?
It's Michelle Jones.
Mary Jane!
Like, that is my favorite name.
Really?
Oh boy, I don't even know really where to start with this one. I have so many mixed feelings about MJ's role in these games. Mary Jane is just Lois Lane. She's just Lois Lane in these games. I don't know why. Well, I do think I know why, but I don't like it. So I'm not sure like where this idea came from, if it was like one of the higher ups, one of the executives or something, or at some point they were like, we need to have Mary Jane be a playable character in these games.
MJ?
Key to all this. If we get
MJ
working.
So reverse engineering Mary Jane's character with that end goal in mind, the easiest way to do that and to give her like some kind of role in progressing the plot and like sort of a sense of agency is to just make her Lois Lane. They just copy and pasted Lois Lane's personality onto Mary Jane, who is a different character, and now she's a reporter at the Daily Bugle, and she's gonna go get the truth or whatever. This is not really something that Mary Jane has ever done in the comics. I guess maybe the Ultimate Comics, kind of, but it's still pretty different. Even that feels like a bit of a stretch. So like, okay, here's my question. Like, what is a character? What even is a character? For a franchise as old as Spider-Man, you end up with dozens of different versions and adaptations and variations of the same character. So you can reinterpret and change them up pretty drastically from version to version. The MCU version of MJ isn't even named Mary Jane. So is it the same character? I don't know. So this Mary Jane is like an investigative reporter, and she's defined by like doing whatever it takes to get to the truth. And like, that's Lois Lane. That's what Lois Lane's character is. And don't get me wrong, I love Lois Lane. I think she's an excellent character. Every version of Lois Lane is like solid. She works in pretty much every version of Superman. But why is Mary Jane this? This is a different thing. I feel like it comes from like a really lazy and surface level understanding of superhero media. Sort of like the same reason they made April O'Neil a reporter in the TMNT cartoon. Even though in the comics she's like a scientist / antique store owner. So, you know, it's a comic book thing, and she's the girl, so she's got to be a reporter, right? That's how comic books work, is there's a girl, and the girl is a reporter. And like, that's what this feels like with Mary Jane, is they're like, you know, Mary Jane's the Spider-Man girl, and Spider-Man's a comic book things. All those comic book girls are reporters, so Mary Jane is a reporter. That makes sense. I do at least appreciate that every version of Spider-Man, except for literally the main comics continuity, realizes that Mary Jane is the like one true love endgame material of Spider-Man. So like they always end up being together.
Love seeing you two together again. You always were my favorites.
So at least Gamerverse MJ I like a little bit more than the main continuity Mary Jane, who has just been like a fucking mess for decades now. I have a similar problem with MCU Ned, who is just Ganke. He's just Ganke. So side tangent here, but fuck you, it's my video.
Do you think there are other Ned Leedses?
Okay, Spider-Man Homecoming Ned, he's just Ganke. He looks like Ganke, he acts like him, he has a similar role in the plot as Ganke typically does. It's just, you just took that character and gave him a different name. Why did we do that? Allegedly, so we didn't have to pay Brian Michael Bendis royalties for creating Ganke. I forget the specific details, but for the longest time, Marvel would not give creators any ownership rights or royalties for any characters they created under the Marvel Comics banner until like somewhat recently, like around the time that Miles Morales was created by Brian Michael Bendis. So anyways, now if someone creates like a new character in a Spider-Man comic, for example, you do have to actually A, credit the creators properly if you end up using that character in an adaptation of some kind, and B, pay them something, like they get some kind of royalties. I don't know specifics of the details of that, but they do have to get compensated for using their original creation. Which is why Brian Michael Bendis spent his last few years at Marvel's creating new characters left and right, even if it didn't really make any sense, because he knew if they ended up getting adapted somehow, he'd get a nice little paycheck. That's just good business. So anyway, Ganke is just in Spider-Man Homecoming, but because allegedly they didn't want to pay Brian Michael Bendis, they call him Ned, a character created back when Stan Lee was working on it, and they don't have to worry about paying anyone anything extra. But he's not like Ned at all, just in any way. Ned Leeds in the comics was like a reporter for the Daily Bugle, and in like the early stories, he was like a romantic rival for Peter with Betty Brant, one of Peter's earliest love interests. Just another reason like I don't really like Gamerverse MJ, because if you were like dead set on having a Marvel Spider-Man character who's a reporter and a love interest to Peter, you could just use Betty Brant, even though she's not the most popular love interest. But fuck me, I guess. But anyways, with Ned in the MCU, they're like, oh, he's like a new interpretation of that character. It's one of Peter's oldest friends from the comics, but we're reinterpreting him for the modern age. It's like, no, you're not. Ned Leeds in the comics and Peter were never friends. They never went to high school together. They didn't really get along that well. They were colleagues at best. And that was it. Like so there's no like elements of that character that are in MCU Ned. Like, what are you talking about? The closest this Ned comes to comic book Ned is he like briefly dates Spider-Man Homecoming Betty in one of the movies, but even that feels like a stretch because that Betty is also pretty different from her comic book version. So like we're just like, oh, because the names are the same, these characters are the same. They're not. They're different. That's why it drives me fucking crazy whenever I see people like post about like, oh, when in Spider-Man No Way Home when Ned says like, oh, I'll never turn into a villain like Harry did. That's a reference to the comics. It's actually really ironic because in the comics, Ned Leeds becomes the Hobgoblin. And it's like, what? What the fuck? What are you? What? Ned Leeds becomes a Hobgoblin, but like not the main one. That's even debatable because there's been multiple Hobgoblins and the lore around him is fucking convoluted as fuck. So whatever. But like that's not anything. That's not a reference to anything. And even if it was, it doesn't make any sense. MCU Ned is just Ganke, but he becomes a wizard for no reason. What the fuck are you talking about? Of course he would never become the Hobgoblin. Like, what is this even this isn't anything. What are you talking about? And if all they wanted to do was just like a different version of characters that we know from the comics, you could have just had him be named Harry, and I wouldn't have half the problems I do. I'd still be like, that's just Ganke, but at least I could be like, oh, well, you know, Harry is canonically Peter's friend, and he went to school with Peter, and there are several versions of Harry where they went to high school together, so this, like, doesn't feel like that big of a stretch, despite him being pretty different. Like, I could accept that. Kind of like, actually, a good example is the recent Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, where Harry's like a black guy. He's pretty different from the comics. At the same time, though, I could still see all the DNA of the original character. There's fucking none of that with Ned. It's just a different guy who's also a character for the comics, but we didn't want to pay Brian Michael Bendis. It's even more frustrating because then when we get to Across the Spider-Verse, and Ganke, like, should theoretically become a major supporting character to Miles by this point, they're like, we have to make him different now to distinguish him from the MCU one, who's clearly Ganke.
I'm not your guy in the chair.
It's like, fucking, what? What are we doing? Ah! No disrespect to Jacob Batalon. I think he actually plays a very good Ganke. I don't like that they call him Ned. So anyways, Mary Jane is Lois Lane now, and she's going to have her own stealth levels. Fun! This is in the first game, and people didn't like these. There's too many of them. They're not fun. They drag down the pacing. They advance the plot, kind of, but not really story or character. Plus, we get like a few missions as Miles before he has power, so he's just a guy and not fun to play as either. It does kind of work in one of the missions with Miles, which is really more of a playable cutscene where like his dad explodes, and then you're just kind of like crawling around the wreckage and trying not to get killed. So the like powerlessness that you feel in that moment is actually like adds to the story and the character. It enhances the experience versus all the other times where you're just like hiding behind a desk as Mary Jane and you're like, man, I sure wish I was playing as Spider-Man now. Gamers really did not like these missions, and so for the second game, Insomniac listened to fans. Kind of. In fairness, the levels in the second game are better. There's less of them, so they don't drag down the pacing as much, and I feel like they're shorter too. And instead of like boring, slow stealth missions, you get a laser gun and you get to kick ass because Mary Jane's just a badass girl boss, and she gets to shoot lasers at the bad guys. This does give like some of the sections a bit more of like a survival horror kind of vibe, which I can get a little bit into, like in the final level where you're breaking into the goo factory, and this one mission where Peter's gone full goo mode and is chasing you down and it's got spooky A24 lighting. It kind of works for me, but like we're mistaking the forest for the trees here. Like we're treating goblin symptoms when we should be treating the goblin disease. The problem was never that Mary Jane wasn't powerful enough to be fun to play as. It's more that just like the concept of playing as Mary Jane is not really that fun. Mary Jane is just a human woman without superpowers. So like in your Spider-Man action game where you get to swing around and play as Spider-Man, it's not really appealing to play as her as a character. She's not even really supposed to be a reporter. She was an actress in the comics, at least she used to be for a while. And like not every character needs to have direct agency on advancing the plot to be an interesting supporting character. Like they never thought to make a level where you play as Aunt May because that would be stupid. The other weird thing is if you wanted to have a level where you played as a female Spider-Man supporting character in your action game, there were plenty of candidates to choose from. Black Cat is right there and like completely underused in these games. These games already steal so much DNA from the Arkham games. You could literally just steal the Catwoman missions because those are fun, because you get to play as Catwoman. It's like, just let me play as characters that are fun to play as. It's not that hard. In the second game, you could have levels where you play as Yuri, who's like a ninja now, I guess. I guess that happened in the DLC that I didn't play. I tapped out of the DLC after the Black Cat missions. I was like, that's good enough for me. See ya. I don't even think the concept of playing as Mary Jane in a video game is inherently bad. I think you could make like a really fun like dialogue choice-based RPG, almost visual novel style level. Kind of like the Witcher 3 level where you have to put on a play.
Here, your frying pan.
You could do like a dating sim type level, mini game based on Secret Hospital. I think that would be really fun. They give Miles a like Mysterio themed rhythm game, which is one of the more fun side quests in this one. You could play with that concept, like actually be creative in your side missions. Here, I will do it for you. Mary Jane is like doing mocap for a new video game. We get real meta on it. Maybe she's like working with Laura Bailey in a like weird, confusing meta situation. You could do like some references to some Spider-Man villains. Maybe we do Mysterio, but maybe we don't because we're using him for Miles side quests or whatever. You could use like, I don't know, Arcade or something, or you could do the Enforcers or something. We haven't seen them in a while. But then, something goes wrong and Mary Jane's trapped in the video game world and she's gotta get out or something. Or you just like play an in-game level for something that she's like working on. Like maybe she's in like a Lara Croft Tomb Raider style game, so you play like a fun like Uncharted cinematic mission where you're like shooting bad guys or something, but it's like within the context of a video game that she's acting in. Like there's ways to make it interesting. There's ways to do cool ideas with Mary Jane. And another thing, there's like all these scenes of Mary Jane driving her motorcycle, and the game's like, look how cool she is driving her motorcycle. But then there's never any levels where you get to play as her driving the motorcycle. Like there's no scene where she's being chased by Venom and you run away on the motorcycle or something. Like what are we doing? I feel like it also kind of completely misses the point of Mary Jane as well, to have her be this like reporter person. It's very weird. Spider-Man is one part action for sure, but it's also one part like romance melodrama. It's a soap opera. It's just as much about the punching the bad guys part as it is about the like romance character drama stuff. There's a balance. See that thing that I said? It's why I think like Web of Shadows actually weirdly does Mary Jane justice in that game, because she's one of the two main romance options that you can go for depending on how you do your good guy bad guy choices throughout the game. The other one being Black Cat, which like you could just use that in this game too. Like that can be part of the game as well as doing dating sim choices. Not every character needs to be an action hero. But one of my favorite versions of Mary Jane is probably the first movie Spider-Man game, where if you enter a cheat code, you can play as her and then just like swing around as Mary Jane. Like it's just a skin, but it's kind of her. See, like that is a way to make Mary Jane playable, but also fun, because you're still swinging around and doing Spider-Man stuff.
So here I am, crawling on your ceiling. I've always been crawling on your ceiling. Crap.
Also, it makes the ending cutscene of the game so gay that it was banned in certain regions. 10 out of 10. It's perfect.
And then there would be a kiss scene there, but it's tiny Mary Jane, so it doesn't work at all.
Also, Mary Jane turns into Scream, I guess. You know, it's nice when we could do something for the pervert community. On that, let's talk about Venom.
I like being bad. It makes me happy.
I give it 5 Venoms out of 5.
Harry is the last major piece of the puzzle that completes the Danny Phantom trio whenever Miles isn't around. So Harry has this mysterious hereditary illness that is never fully explained what it is, so I think we have to assume it's the Goblin disease from Amazing Spider-Man 2. Weirdly, there's like a decent amount of DNA from that movie in this game. Anyways, Harry ends up becoming Venom as the true final boss of this game. They do this thing a lot in these games where the villains are portrayed as mostly sympathetic, or at least they have like a tragic backstory or whatever. And I actually like this quite a bit. It works really well for characters like Doc Ock, who is great. Mr. Negative ends up becoming like a lot more interesting, and in this game they end up using him in cool ways too. Even Norman seems to like genuinely care about his son in a version of the character that we rarely ever see. Venom is a character that's fueled by like pure hatred. So how does that work here? Well, it starts off awesome. Venom looks incredible. He's even got the spider logo, which I can't believe I have to fucking specify. He's voiced by Tony Todd and sounds amazing.
We were separated because of you.
And you get to play as Venom for a level that feels straight out of Ultimate Spider-Man for the PS2. You just like kill dozens of men in like pretty brutal fashion for a T-rated game. You get this cool boss fight with Kraven, who I didn't talk about that much in this video, but I like Kraven. He was cool. Find someone who looks at you the way Kraven looks at Venom. He's just this crazy roided out Russian man with cancer. He's looking for a warrior's death, because Kraven is only interesting when he dies. And he does here when you get to eat his head off. Incredible stuff. But if you stop to like think about it for a minute, it doesn't really make it much sense for both the symbiote and Harry as characters. Part of the reason that Venom is a compelling villain is that both the symbiote and Eddie Brock have like equal reason to hate Spider-Man. They both have motivation to hate Spider-Man, so that's why they combine together to become Venom. Spectacular probably has my favorite version of Venom in it, where Eddie Brock starts out sympathetic and he's like a friend of Peter, but then over the course of the first season, he slowly gets scorned more and more by both Peter and Spider-Man. And so when the symbiote finally latches onto him, he realizes that Peter has been lying to him about being Spider-Man and is also the cause of all of his pain. So they have this like beautiful moment where he realizes that that's his true enemy.
I don't have two enemies. I have one.
And there are genuine moments where Peter does neglect his friends that Eddie takes note of. So as it does build to like an unhealthy level, it doesn't come from nowhere too. Peter does make mistakes throughout the season. And the symbiote has been rejected by Peter, so it also has like compelling motivation to hate Spider-Man. So when both Eddie and the symbiote combine to become Venom, it's like these two entities working in symbiosis to become a terrifying and compelling villain. Both Eddie and the symbiote are on the same page. That's why they say we. But then Harry just like bites a guy's head off. And they don't even really lean that hard into the motivation that Harry might have for killing Kraven, like how Kraven blew up his science factory and all that stuff. He's more just like, blah, I'm Venom now, and just like kills a bunch of people. And I'm not even really thinking about it because it's very fun to play as Venom and Tony Todd's voice is great. And it's refreshing to see like a classic Spider-Man villain like Venom in a Spider-Man story. It's cool. I like it. But when I was thinking about it later, when I was getting my Venom juice out of the fridge, I was like, wait a minute, why did Harry eat that guy? He also transforms into like full Venom super quick. They established that while Peter has a symbiote, that it's like the longer he has it, the more and more it's taking him over. And Harry did have the symbiote earlier in the story, but then he lost it for a bit, and then when he gets it back, he's just like full Venom instantly. Like, it's a pretty big leap from Agent Venom to... And the whole time, Harry is still kind of fighting against the symbiote. So again, that kind of leads against the whole like we thing. Like, why is he saying we if he and the symbiote are conflicted? That's why Venom is typically treated as such a big threat, because Eddie Brock or whoever has willingly bonded with the symbiote. So that makes him more dangerous. But here the whole time it's like, oh, Harry's not himself. The symbiote's like messing with his mind. And that's true with Peter as well, but it feels like if that's the case, then they shouldn't be as bonded as they are, at least in classic symbiote lore. It's just that Harry doesn't really have much motivation to be a villain in the first place. He was mad at Pete when Pete took over the symbiote for himself and was using it while Harry was actively dying of the goblin disease, which is fair. Like, that's a reasonable thing to be mad at Pete for. We see through Peter that the symbiote seems to like amplify your existing fears and insecurities. So Pete gets a lot more aggressive while being Spider-Man, but it all comes from him associating being Spider-Man with helping people. So he's like, if I become a better Spider-Man, I can help people more effectively. He's sort of mistaking the power that the symbiote gives him with the power to help people. Harry definitely has like fears and insecurities about Peter's relationship with Norman and Harry's relationship with Peter, all that stuff, maybe even anger and hate. But I still think that like doesn't quite translate to him biting a guy's head off. You know, there's this whole thing where Harry wants to heal the world. He wants to put a suit of goo around the world, and the symbiote gives him this vision of goo taking over the whole world. If everyone's symbiote, then no one is, or something. And I guess the implication is that because the symbiote has some kind of healing factor, it can heal the goblin disease and any other kind of injury, apparently. If everyone becomes goo, then everyone will be healed or whatever. But if the symbiote wants to turn everyone into goo, why did it eat that guy? So like, I don't even think the motivations of the symbiote being venom and killing people makes that much sense either, at least with this version of the character. The game gets itself like stuck between an alien rock and a hard place, because it wants to have a faithful visual adaptation of Venom and have Venom be a cool villain, while at the same time having this like sympathetic story with Harry. And I don't think the two quite work. As fun as the Venom levels are gameplay-wise, story-wise, the balance is off. The more I've thought about Spider-Man 2, the more I've kind of come to appreciate its flaws. It's this big, convoluted, tangled web of characters, ideas, and continuity, which is in fact very Spider-Man. This ongoing, messy soap opera with decades of history and continuity and dozens of different writers and artists' interpretations all mashed together into one thing. I have a lot of nitpicks with this game and like how it uses certain characters, but what Spider-Man story is without flaw? And ultimately, the story and character stuff really doesn't matter that much because the moment-to-moment gameplay is so much fun. The game has two lead characters that are equally a joy to play as, and the act of simply swinging through New York City never gets old. Is this game perfectly balanced? Nah, not really. But it is imbalanced in a way that is very Spider-Man, and I think that's neat. Also, end credits scene where they tease Cindy Moon, fucking my heart skipped a beat for a second. I fucking love Silk as a character. I might have to do another video about Silk at some point to really get into why I think she's so cool. But like, I'm really curious to see what they do with her when and if we eventually get a third game. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed me ranting about my favorite Spider guy. Let me know what you think of Sony's Marvel's Spider-Man 2 for the PlayStation 5. Buy yours today. And what's your favorite Spider-Man story? If you like this video, maybe subscribe or something. It's free and it helps me out a lot. And maybe check out some other videos. Also, special shout out to Gamer's Little Playground, which I stole many of the cutscenes and gameplay from, so go check out their stuff and support them. That's it for me. Bye-bye.